Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Ryan Day has made a concerted effort to recruit the heck out of the state of Ohio. Seems like a no-brainer, but I think there was some, I don't know if trepidation is the right word. Maybe some Ohio State fans were a little bit worried that he might not really focus that much on Ohio because he's not from Ohio. He's a guy from New Hampshire. He's coached all around the country. Really no Ohio roots till he came to Ohio State 2 years ago. But, getting Jakob James from Cincinnati Elder, the offensive lineman in the 2020 class, and just many other examples of what he's doing out on the recruiting trail. Looks like Ryan Day is almost Jim Tressel-esque, dare I say, in his quest to land the best players in Ohio.
Yeah, and that's a double-edged sword, Dave. I mentioned that in the Bucket of Bullets this week, and a lot of people were excited again about the emphasis on Ohio, and a lot of people were a bit trepidatious, if you will. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out because I don't think it's a coincidence that Jakob James committed to Ohio State being a kid at Elder. It's not like this is some lower-rated three-star kid who has plenty of time and under Urban Meyer would have had to camp and all kinds of other stuff from some small high school. He goes to Elder. This is a relationship-building commitment, if there ever was one. Not that James isn't going to develop into likely a very good guard at Ohio State, but Urban Meyer's recruiting would likely have not included him as a Buckeye. And we've said this numerous times. There's a lot of Ohio kids that under Urban Meyer weren't going to go to OSU that probably would have under Jim Tressel. Now, there's a line here because I think Urban went national to the point that maybe we never really considered it, but the high school coaches in the state of Ohio were frustrated that kids that they believed deserved an OSU look didn't get one. And I think Ryan Day is working really hard to rebuild that relationship because Ryan Day doesn't have the same rock star abilities as Urban Meyer in recruiting where he can walk into any high school in America and the kids be like, well, yeah, I got to visit. So I think maybe I'm wrong here, but I think this is a relationship builder, a bit of a, hey, Ohio coaches, I care about you guys. And I don't want him to go full Tressel, but I do think there's a bit of a shift back to Ohio we're going to see here. Are you reading this differently than me, Dave? It seems like this is a relationship builder, sort of an olive branch commitment, if you will.
I like it. I think before it's all said and done, Jakob James will be a 4-star recruit. And if he's not, I'm still okay with it because I love the idea of, because he's one of those kids. I love the idea of just getting the top players in Ohio and not just the top 5 players, but maybe the top 15 players if you can, or 10 of the top 15. And he's a classic case of a kid. If he would go to Notre Dame or even West Virginia or Michigan State or anywhere and he would flourish, everybody and their mother would be like, well, why the hell did Ryan Day get this kid? What's wrong with Ryan Day? How did he miss out on this kid from Cincinnati? And I know Cincinnati hasn't exactly been a hotbed for Ohio State recruiting, but yeah, I really like this. I like the overall scope of what I'm seeing, not just, as far as recruiting in Ohio, but also Ryan Day, and this is a no-brainer, I get it, but he's really focused on offensive linemen. You look at what he's doing, sounds like Paris Johnson. Speaking of offensive linemen in the 2020 class from Cincinnati, Luke Whippler's already in the class now, Jakob James. And hopefully they sign a couple in the late signing period here for 2019 as well with Doug Nestor and DeJuan Jones. But, Ryan Day is going all in with offensive linemen. It's easy to see why, Bax.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is worth pointing out here is that we're like, he's the 24th rated kid in the state of Ohio. What are we doing? Well, he's the 4th rated offensive lineman in the state of Ohio and the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the state of Ohio. So I guess that bears some consideration. It's one of these things where right now it's like when you grade a draft, like, oh, wow, the Bears had a great draft this year. You have no idea, right? You don't know until these kids perform on the field. So if Jakob James comes to Columbus and, has that, Ohio Midwestern brawn and starts for 2 years or something, we're going to say, wow, that was a good pick. If he comes in and he's a new age Connor Smith, there's an old school reference for you guys, and doesn't do anything, then we're all going to say, well, what was Ryan Day thinking? You know, he was reaching too far down the Ohio State, totem pole here to go there. So it's a line. And I think a lot of people are concerned, remembering back to the Tressel era, where we didn't necessarily compete as well with some of the national powers because of overall size and speed and skill. I think that's not going to be an issue under Ryan Day. I still think the recruiting expectations are the same. And I do think that an offensive line position is definitely a little bit of a unique one compared to some of these other positions that we're talking about. So this is a TBD, but it's certainly an eyebrow-raising one. And again, I think the biggest thing out of this is that this is an olive branch to Ohio coaches. They're going to say, wow, that kid isn't a clear cut, has to go to Ohio State. He's not Jalen Gill. He's not Paris Johnson, right? And they're going to say, hey, kids, if you work hard, you can be a Buckeye. And I also think that they probably really love that they didn't dick around and say, all right, we got a camp, and we don't want to offer yet. They picked the kid, and they chose him, and they won. I think they like that decisiveness. To me, if he works out, then great. But I think there's certainly more than a small element of, picking the number 776 national kid. It's a lot of this to me seems like, hey, Ohio coaches, we have your back. We're here.
Ryan Day's first assistant coaching staff has now been finalized. That's, a couple of weeks has been cemented now. As you look back on the job Ryan Day did, I mean, it's so imperative to hit a home run. You can't just hit a double with your coaching staff. And Jim Tressel, I kick it back to him again, just the Tressel isms, it's like you buy the house, then you got to buy all the furniture and everything. So, Ryan Day, I think he did a pretty good job buying the furniture. Your thoughts on how he did putting together his coaching staff?
I like it. I feel pretty good about a lot of the decisions he made. I like that. I think the big hires for me really are in defense, because I don't think anybody fears an Ohio State offense underperforming under Ryan Day. Bringing Mike Yursich in, who was going to be the most misspelled coaching name in the history of Ohio State's beat, is a huge success. The guy was an unbelievable
Warner, with everybody putting WARR to start it out with.
Yeah, as I say, I still don't remember how to spell his name right, but and I wrote his name literally 1,000 times in articles.
Well, he's at the school up north now anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, his name is spelled F-U. I mean, sorry. But the defensive staff for me though, like you got Ron Wilson and you got Mike Yursich and you got Alford and you got the Brian Hartline. The offensive staff's going to be great. Ryan Day's going to have a great offense at Ohio State. I don't fear that at all. The defense, to me, I figured he'd bring in somebody who's a veteran voice that he trusts. And bringing in Greg Madison, a lot of people would be like, "Wow, what are they doing?" Blah. It's a veteran guy that he can treat as a mentor to Jeff Hafley while he learns. It's a guy who Dave, for some reason or another, believes is a guy he can trust as the overseer on his defense. And then the position coaches are spectacular. I mean, you still have Larry Johnson, stealing Al Washington from the school up north, who's also a fantastic recruiter and an Ohio guy ready to come home. I like it. I think you can fix a lot of the problems we had on defense with this staff. So, you know what? Ryan Day swung, and I don't think he necessarily missed at all. People are going to talk about grabbing one of the LSU coaches and how that didn't happen. But for a guy like Ryan Day, who's never had to hire a staff before, I think that the holes were filled in a solid fashion. But again, it's even more nebulous than in recruiting, right? Like in recruiting, you know that if you have a 4 or 5 star kid and you have 20 of them, you're going to have a good class. Coaching staffs, you don't know until you see the performance on the field. But my expectations for this coaching staff, particularly defensively, are much higher than I would have had with the old staff returning. That's for sure.
All right, Demario McCall, reading the world famous Bucket of Bullets written by Matt Baxendell, the People's Champ. I'm reading it and I'm getting excited because I hear you thinking, Ohio State, they should use Demario McCall like the Saints use Alvin Kamara. And I'm like, yes, let's do that. And then I think, wait a minute though, is Demario McCall that good though? Is he good enough to even? Should we even be talking about that? But I like where your mind's at. Just expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, and first of all, credit to J-Book. He verbalized what I've been for 2 years. I've been saying, oh my God, why isn't Demario McCall playing more? But he verbalized exactly the reason in my mind why I wanted to see him, which was he's that kind of threat. Now, comparing anybody to Alvin Kamara is stupid because he's an elite, ridiculously good player. But on the same token, Demario McCall could have a similar Kamara-esque impact with this team next year on offense. And I say that because go back and watch the film against Michigan where he burns past Devin Bush for that long gainer on the wheel route and tell me that guy isn't capable of being an elite pass catcher out of the backfield, that he doesn't have more top-end speed and everything than me, even J.K. Dobbins, who I certainly think I'm looking forward to seeing have an improved year next year. And McCall's a little there's concerns about his size, right, and his durability. But of the same token, a guy you can move around like that, who is just the ultimate matchup nightmare, is something that most teams just will not be able to defend. And I have to think Ryan Day is certainly looking at him as a weapon like that. Those weapons are harder than heck to find with that kind of dynamic ability to be moved around everywhere. I don't think he's going to be Alvin Kamara in the NFL, but I think he could have a similar dangerous impact at the college level without question. He has the skill and ability.
All right, last thing before I let you go, my friend. Ohio State basketball tonight. The Buckeyes will get back into action. They will play at home against Purdue, trying to end a 4-game losing streak. Again, hopefully people can get out to the game tonight. The Buckeyes need your support. 7 p.m. tip-off at the Schott tonight, Wednesday night. If you can't make it out, or if you're, in Australia or something, the game will be broadcast on Big Ten Network beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Kyle Young, bad news for the Buckeyes here. Kyle Young, who's been just extremely improved, exponentially improved from his freshman year. The sophomore forward is now out for at least the next 4 weeks due to a stress fracture in his right leg. Kyle Young, that's really bad news backs. Purdue coming to town. Purdue's kind of, with Carson Edwards, they're kind of hitting their stride here. Hopefully the Buckeyes can win tonight. Just talk about this game tonight against Purdue. And in fact, the Buckeyes are going to be without Kyle Young here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I can echo what you said, Dave, in that the Buckeyes really need your support, because what looked like a really awesome, promising start to the season is rapidly devolving into a, oh crap, what's going on here sort of season. It's one of these things where I think a lot of us are very concerned right now as to where this team is going. And Kyle Young being injured at this point in the year it's the sort of thing you don't need when you're already on a slide. You're losing to Rutgers. You're in a conference in the Big Ten that has a lot of really good teams. I believe in Chris Holtmann. I think this team's going to get itself turned around. But this is a tall order right now, and this team's shifted back to the NCAA bubble when I think most of us thought they were guaranteed in. This was sort of the gap year between the big class that was just signed and the first year of Holtmann that was massively successful. Just based on some really good development and stuff from some guys who were already on the roster. Last year was a surprise, but then you saw when you had the caliber of guys that you did on the roster, you weren't surprised. This year was the year that you'd hoped going into the offseason, or coming in from the offseason. I think all of us thought, okay, I hope we do well this year, but I'm certainly not going to hold it against Holtmann if he has to, because the roster's really limited right now. And then they started so well that our expectations changed. But really, what we're seeing right now is roughly what I think we all expected to see back in October, right? So I hope they can get it turned around, but they've had some significant injury issue here with Kyle Young, and they just have to start playing better. They're still a young team, and I hope they can get it fixed. They certainly need our support, because if this team makes the tournament, it may be the best job Holtmann's ever done as a coach anywhere. And with the reinforcements coming in next year's the year we really start talking about OSU teams making a run in the tournament.
No doubt about it. Holtmann, in my opinion, was still a Grand Slam home run hire, and 2019-2020 Buckeyes next season, they're going to be tremendous, in my opinion. Also, in my opinion, Matt Baxendell is an all-star, and you got to read his column every Sunday. It is the Bucket of Bullets. Thank you to the people's champ, Matt Baxendell. And thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate that. I hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.